You know, you see the woman, she's being mistreated by the man. And what does she say? Well, what's wrong with me? Yeah, she sees her what? Herself as the problem. What's wrong with me? And then and now she won't say, well, what? What's wrong with you? You must be sick or crazy. You don't know what good thing you got here. Then what does she do? Well, you say I'm too fat. She takes her weight off. You say my hair is too nappy, then she straightens it up. You say that I don't dress, she puts on a new dress. And what? Every time she makes a step, what happens? It's something else. It's something else. And you know this feeling, black people, because you've been through it, haven't you? What did they tell you about 20 years ago? If you'll only get education. And your parents told you, just get that education. You know, and you went out and busted your brain and got the education. And you found out again there was another thing going. Each time you make a move, there's a new demand. You can never get right. Because, ladies and gentlemen, so many people's own ego depends on other people always being what? Wrong. And when their ego and self-perception and their way of life itself depends on you being wrong, they are never going to let you be right. It doesn't matter. It doesn't make a difference what you do. And when you look at the European and the way the European lives upon the backs of our people, and the way the European consumes and eats up the world's resources, and the European style of life, you must recognize then that that style of life depends upon you never being right. And you're never going to be enough and do enough to be accepted by these people, because their very life depends upon you being wrong. No matter what you do, ladies and gentlemen, you can jerry your curls all night long. You are not going to be white. I'm telling you. You can three-piece it. You can three-piece it all you want to. You can get your sophisticated language all you want to. You can read all the Shakespeare you want to read. You can keep up with Time magazine. You can read Wall Street Journal. You can do all the things you think they tell you you should do. And you're going to find out you are still just a nigger. In the end. Because his world depends upon you being so. And you're going to find out then, while you're getting all of this, you're going to leave so many other things undeveloped. So much power. And you have the power, ladies and gentlemen. You have the power. It is the European who is dependent, not the African. It is the European who is poor, not the African. One brother mentioned something one day I thought was very interesting when one young lady was talking to him, talking about how poor we were. And he says, can you exploit poor people? Can you take something from poor people? If you're really poor, can you really take something from them? Why is it that other people, Koreans and others, somehow can seem to get something out of these poor black people? How is it that the Europeans can get all of this wealth out of the poor black nations? How is it that the Japanese who live on a rock in the middle of the sea can be wealthy while these poor black nations are starving to death? It is the European that is dependent upon our people. Why is there a struggle in South Africa today? Because Southern Africa represents, as someone described it, the Gold Coast of the minerals that are needed by the Europeans to survive as a nation and as a people. There are minerals and metals and so forth in the southern regions of Africa but which this nation and other European nations cannot live without, ladies and gentlemen. The space age would not be even possible without those metals. If those metals were not gotten into this country, it was stated that we would reverse our living conditions some 50 years or more. There are metals which Southern Africa produces almost 100% of. And about the only other European-controlled nation that has those minerals and metals is Russia. And yet we are told that we are dependent as a people. This black people in this United States are called poor people. And yet we know that if you look at the wealth of black people in this country, we are about the 9th or 10th richest nation. But we refuse to think of ourselves as a nation. And we refuse to act as a nation. That is the poverty, not the lack of money. A people who spend 5 cents out of every dollar for their own people and give 95 cents out of every dollar to another people are not a poor people. And they make other people rich. In the so-called ghetto of Harlem, if you would stop and think, you must recognize that there are billions of dollars passed through that ghetto, day in and day out. Billions. Just think about the absentee landlords who soak up your money. The store owners, the teachers that teach in your neighborhood, the policemen, the other people, thousands and thousands and millions of dollars being earned and worked right through your fingers. And you're saying you're poor people. See, a lack of definition. So consequently, when you define yourself in terms of another people's standards, you will always come up lacking in something and come up deviant. And it is a pitiful kind of thing, because what you see happening in Harlem has happened the world over. You go in parts of Africa, and what are you going to see running the stores? Indians, Muslims, and whatever other number, except African people themselves. Which means the game that is run on the African mind is being run the world over. And yet these are supposed to be poor people. And yet other people are getting rich, working them from one end to the other. The other thing that's mentioned here is an ability